Hey there, welcome to LSAT Demon Daily. I'm Nathan Fox. With me today is Erik Johansson. I'm one of the founders of LSATdemon.com. Erik is a teacher for us at LSAT Demon and is the producer of this podcast and our Thinking LSAT podcast. We're going to do a logical reasoning question today that you put on the agenda, Erik.
I did, Nate, and I think this is going to be a good opportunity to talk about indicator words, or as I've heard them called sometimes, buzzwords. I spoke to at least one pre-law group, and the student leading the panel asked about, hey, what's the deal with buzzwords in logical reasoning?
Buzzwords.
So let's do this, and I think this question is a great illustration of why you don't want to rely on indicator words.
Okay. Why don't you read the argument to me and I'll react?
Totally. So for those of you playing along at home, this is test 135, section 1, question 2. A florist says that some people like to have green carnations on St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, okay. I'm familiar with carnations. They're a cheap flower, easily dyed. I don't think they grow green. I think that people dye them green for a holiday like St. Patrick's Day. This does not mean that all people like to have green carnations on St. Patrick's Day. I certainly do not like to have green carnations on St. Patrick's Day. I do not observe myself.
You're a St. Patty's Day Scrooge.
I am a St. Patty's Day Scrooge. Used to be a big fan. Now, not so much. I will note that the sum there is a really open-ended, that sum means not zero, but it could be 2, 3, 5 million, billion.
It could be every person in the world.
It could include all. Although, knowing from personal experience, it just seems unlikely that it would mean all in this case. But it could, because some just means more than one, or one or more. Some means one or more. And so it's just like, well, not zero. So the florist is basically saying, yeah, some people like this shit.
Okay. Some people like to have green carnations on St. Patrick's Day, but flowers that are naturally green are extremely rare.
So I would immediately go, all right, well, then are carnations one of those extremely rare, naturally green flowers? Or do we have some other, because like my outside knowledge, I was like, well, I think what they do is they like put them in green water and they absorb the green water and become green. So, but I would have that question, at this point, the record doesn't tell me one way or the other. I know that flowers that are naturally green are extremely rare, but I do not know whether carnations happen to be among those flowers, at least not based on this record.
Yeah. We also don't know if there was some non-carnation flower that was sometimes green. Do people like that for St. Patrick's Day?
No clue.
Do we have the option to go with a non-carnation flower
Could
on
be
St.
everybody.
Patrick's Day?
Could be nobody. I just know that some people like to have green carnations.
Yeah.
And then I know that naturally green flowers are extremely rare, but could be all carnations are naturally green. I don't know whether that second premise applies to the carnations mentioned in the first premise.
Totally. The florist continues. Thus, it is very difficult for plant breeders to produce green carnations.
Okay. I'm not sure if that's, I know that it says thus there, but I guess that means that this is a conclusion of the argument. I'm not sure that it's ultimately the main conclusion of their argument because they do have more to say. But, I get it. Like, because flowers that are naturally green are extremely rare, it is very difficult for plant breeders to produce green carnations. I think what you're saying there is that green carnations are not naturally green. You'd probably have to cross them with some naturally green flower. And you're saying, well, because naturally green flowers are so rare, it's really hard for plant breeders to come up with green carnations. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now we got a bit of a paradox because some people like to have green carnations on St. Patrick's Day, but apparently they are very difficult to produce.
So where do they come from? Well, last sentence. Before St. Patrick's Day, then, it is wise for florists to stock up on white carnations which are fairly inexpensive and quite easy to dye green.
Okay, that's what I think from my outside knowledge. I mean, I think that they dye carnations for every holiday. Apparently, white carnations are like cheap and easy to get, and you can just dye them whatever color. So on St. Patrick's Day, you want to have a green carnation boutonniere for your for your pub crawl. Um,
To be
then
the
okay,
fanciest dressed person at the pub crawl.
yeah. Okay, so cool. So you're telling, that ultimately what this florist really wants, right? We're at the end of the argument now. So the last thing I would do before I would look at the question is I would say, look, why are you wasting my time with this? What do you want here? What are you trying to sell? And what they're trying to sell is advice to florists. They're saying it's wise for florists to stock up on white carnations before St. Patrick's Day. Why? Oh, well, because they're cheap, they're easy to dye green, it's hard to find naturally green flowers. It's extremely rare for plant breeders to produce green carnations, but some people like to have green carnations on St. Patrick's Day. Add all that up. I mean, boy, I'm counting one, two, three, four, like four premises plus an intermediate conclusion, which is another premise, uh, which is the sentence that starts with thus, which is why you cannot rely, if this probably turns out to be a conclusion question based on your preamble.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the conclusion of this argument is telling florists what to do. And again, that is stock up on white carnations before St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, I spoiled it because I told you in advance it was going to be a conclusion question. But not knowing that, are you done with this argument? I guess my question is, does this seem like good advice to you?
It's reasonable as far as it goes. Like I wouldn't see this as an outright flawed argument. But, it definitely has missing pieces. Like, is it wise for florists to provide everything that some people want? Because, what if they want it, but they're not willing to pay for the cost of green dye? Or what if they want it, but they don't want dyed flowers? Or what if they want it, but instead you could just be like, look, jackass, a red rose is always going to look better than a green carnation. Plus,
Yeah.
I have higher profit margin on red roses. So
Sure.
you'll look better. I'll make more money. Let's do a deal on the red roses. I don't know. There's a lot of reasons you could make all kinds of objections to
What
that.
if some people is only 3 people?
Exactly. Yeah. How many people really want this? Am I gonna, how long do white carnations hold? Like, what if I stock up, but their shelf life is 1 hour? I stock up, I dye them green. They're all dead the day before St. Patrick's Day. I don't know. I could go on and on. Like I could just we could never stop talking. The rest of the day today, I could come up with various objections. What about this? What about that? What about this other thing? So this is not an argument where the conclusion is proven, nor is it an argument that I would call outright flawed. They're not confusing sufficient for necessary here. They're not confusing correlation and causation here. There's not some obvious elephant in the room where I want to go, really? You just said this, but now you're saying that? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Right? This isn't an argument that makes me immediately yell at them. It makes me, my reaction is basically, oh, okay. So you're trying to tell people to do something that, yeah, I mean, from what you've said, it seems kind of reasonable, but there's lots of scenarios where it would not make sense.
Yeah. I would have some follow-up questions before
Exactly.
deciding to invest money in your green carnation venture. But on its face, seems like a reasonable advice. Cool. Question is, which one of the following most accurately expresses the overall conclusion of the florist's argument? And
Great.
We have the word thus in there, so we immediately just go to the sentence that begins with the word thus, right, Nathan?
Well, this is a question that Kaplan students miss. I mean, yeah, like that old school Princeton review thing of, hey, you don't have time to understand these questions, so we're going to give you a bunch of gimmicks. So you just read the question first. When you notice that it's a conclusion question, you just go look for these buzzwords or keywords or whatever the hell they're going to call it. Here, your eye goes straight to thus. You don't even read the rest of it. you go, it is very difficult for plant breeders to produce green carnations. I mean, that's the part that follows the word thus. So that's the conclusion of the argument. Well, it might be a conclusion of the argument because I do think that the second premise supports the thus.
Yeah, naturally green flowers are rare, thus it's difficult to produce green carnations.
Sure. So I'm willing to call that a conclusion of the argument. But they didn't come here to try to prove to you that it's difficult for plant breeders to produce green carnations. It functions in this statement more as a premise than it does as a conclusion. So that, by the way, an intermediate conclusion is both a premise and a conclusion. They did some reasoning to get to it. That's why it's a conclusion, but it's not their overall conclusion. It's a premise in support of their overall conclusion. And, in real life, I don't even think any of those words would cross my mind. I would have read all this and I would have gone, you're trying to tell me that it's wise for florists to stock up on white carnations before St. Patrick's Day. When the conclusion question pops up, they're asking me for the main conclusion of the argument. I will always take a moment to make sure that I'm going to predict as close as possible to the answer. Here, because of the placement of that thus, I might also predict a wrong answer that says it's very difficult for plant breeders to produce green carnations. That would be an insidious wrong answer that will be chosen by everybody who tries to take the shortcut. This is an invalid shortcut. I'm noticing also that this is a question number 2. So that's just devastating. If that's there in the answer choices, then this becomes like a surprisingly tricky, like a trappy kind of a question specifically for people who are reading the question before they read the passage.
And relying on indicator words to find the conclusion. Yeah.
Well, skimming. Yeah. Instead of not reading the florist statement. You can't read the florist statement, the entire thing, and really understand all of it, and then come away with, oh, well, they wanted to prove to me that it's very difficult for plant breeders to produce green carnations. No, they didn't. Why did they say all this other shit about how easy it is to dye carnations green and how some people like to have green carnations on St. Patrick's Day? Why that's not meant to support the idea that it's difficult to produce green carnations. Rather, it's difficult to produce green carnations is meant as evidence for before St. Patrick's Day, it's wise for florists to stock up on white carnations. So that's the answer.
Cool. Yeah. Now it's just a matter of finding it in the answer choices. Answer choice A, it is a good idea for florists to stock up on white carnations before St. Patrick's Day.
Okay, so that's exactly what I predicted. That's going to be the answer 99% of the time, unless I've wildly misunderstood something. I would actually click the A here, but I wouldn't click submit or next or whatever, because I just got to tick off B, C, D, E. It's just a checklist, just want to make sure I take a peek at them. And I might get a little boost of confidence if I see it is very difficult for plant breeders to produce green carnations as one of these wrong answers. Because I would go, aha, that's the trap.
No, didn't get me with that one. Okay, answer choice B. So we like A, and I want to echo what you said. Clicking it, selecting it, not just leaving it open to come back to later. No, this was your prediction. Be ready to pick it and then just eliminate the other ones.
And I would say that that's pretty much what I'm doing all the time. I mean, I'm either eliminating or choosing an answer. I'm not reading it and then reading the next one and then reading the next one. I'm actively I'm going to make a decision on each answer choice. Now that does mean that sometimes I select an answer, later realize, oh, wait a second, what about this answer? And then I have to have a death match between those two answers. It also means—
throw them in the octagon.
Yep. It also means that I will sometimes eliminate all 5 answers because I have to take action on every answer. So sometimes I will have said, nope, 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 nope. And then I kind of got to reboot and go back and give them a little more attention. Some of the answers have to get a little more attention so that I can understand how they could be correct. But yeah, I'm not just in the business of leaving answers open so that I can get to a 50-50. That's not my goal. My goal is to get to 100%. And here I'm already at 99% that A is the answer. So I click it and then I'm just looking to tick off. And I don't think I would take the time though to no on B, no on C, no on D. Rather, I'm just going to click the A and then I'm going to read the rest of them before I hit submit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I very rarely use the
The
minus
X out.
arrow hide
No.
this.
Yeah, when I say I'm eliminating them, I don't waste the time of Xing them out. Maybe I would do that if I had eliminated all 5 on my first read. Then I might go through and go, okay, wait, it can't be that. It can't be that. Can't be that. And then I'm doing more of a process of elimination. But normally I'm going to positively identify the correct answer on my first read through. Like I have here. It's like, oh, well, that's just got to be A. So I'm clicking the A. And then, yeah, what do the rest of these answers say?
Answer choice B, flowers that are naturally green are very rare.
That's a premise of the argument, and I know that because flowers that are naturally green are very rare. Therefore, it's a good idea for florists to stock up on white before St. Patrick's Day.
B is out. Answer choice C, there are some people who like to have green carnations on St. Patrick's Day.
Also a premise. That's why it's a good idea for florists to stock up on white carnations before St. Patrick's Day.
And I imagine, Nathan, that when you were doing this, you probably would stop reading after what there are some people.
Yeah, right. Like yeah. Best case, that's going to be a premise. It only gets worse from there, where they could misstate it. They could say there are some people who like to have green roses on St. Patrick's Day, which then is clearly wrong because that wasn't even in the argument. But yeah, they're not going to get to the main conclusion of the argument, starting with there are some people who
do anything.
The conclusion is it's wise for florists to stock up on white carnations before St. Patrick's Day, which is exactly what A said.
Yeah. D, white carnations are fairly inexpensive and can easily be dyed green.
That's why florists should stock up on them before St. Patrick's Day. So B, C, and D are all evidence in favor of A.
Answer choice E, it is very difficult to breed green carnations.
Boom. That's where I hit the it actually doesn't make me go faster, but it does give me a boost of confidence. I was going to say it's like those arrows on Mario Kart where I hit the arrow, the red and yellow, gold, whatever, the speed thing, but it doesn't actually make me go faster, but it does. I read that and I go, yep, that's going to be the most commonly chosen wrong answer. Anybody who's reading the question first is very likely to choose that answer. People try to argue with us about this, but I've just helped so many people over the years get vastly better at logical reasoning by not reading the question first. And the most common retort is, but Nathan, what about when it's a main conclusion question? Don't I save so much time by reading the question first? And it's like, well, okay, sometimes maybe, yeah. But not really, because it doesn't take that long to just dominate the argument in the first place. 2, even if it helps you go a little bit faster 9 times out of 10 on this question, you're going to go fast and choose the wrong answer. And that's the kiss of death, because you've now completely wasted whatever time you did spend on this question. You at least read the question and part of the argument and all 5 answers to get down to E. So it still took you a lot of time, but now you chose E based on this invalid shortcut because you hadn't actually just mastered the record in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Answer here is A, not E, and I would just guarantee that the most commonly chosen wrong answer is E.
And you're correct, according to LSAT Demon statistics.
Yeah, I mean, it's just obvious. Like here, people are, if you're going in looking for, oh, well, thus always indicates the conclusion. No, it doesn't. I think thus always indicates a conclusion. But arguments can have multiple conclusions. This isn't a wildly complicated argument, by the way. If you were going to tell your dad what this is about, you'd be like, oh, well, it's advice for florists to buy a bunch of white carnations before St. Patrick's Day. Why should they do that? Well, it's very difficult to breed green carnations. So E is clearly a premise in support of A. If you weren't quite sure, it just doesn't make any sense the other way around. If I were to say, it's a good idea for florists to stock up on white carnations before St. Patrick's Day, therefore, it's very difficult to breed green carnations? Huh?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. A can't support E. They were both in the argument, though. E supports A, so A is the conclusion of the argument.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's 2 versions of that you can do. You can you can test out the therefore if you want to add a therefore, or you can test out a because to see.
What's that
for instance,
sound like?
imagine an argument. Imagine I told you, hey, it's cold, it's raining, we're not going to the zoo today. No indicator words in there.
No.
But very clearly one of those is the conclusion. It's cold, it's raining, therefore we are not going to the zoo today.
Or we're not going to the zoo because it's cold, because it's raining. So because is going to indicate a premise.
Yep.
Therefore is going to indicate a conclusion. It only makes sense if you say it in the right order.
Yeah, because otherwise you're saying, because we're not going to the zoo today, it's cold and it's raining.
Right.
Huh?
Yeah.
What? Our choice to not go had that kind of effect on the weather? Wow.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can just play with the two. If you know that A was in the argument and if you know that E was in the argument, you could play with, okay, so which one is a reason for the other one? The one that's the reason is not the answer.
Yeah.
The one that's supported by the other one is the answer. And if A weren't there and if they hadn't said the last sentence, if you had B and E to choose from, you would be able to correctly choose E in that case because flowers that are naturally green are very rare. Therefore, it's very difficult to breed green carnations. Why is it very difficult to breed green carnations? Well, because flowers that are naturally green are very rare. See, that makes sense. So, and if this were an intermediate conclusion, if they were asking for I don't think they ever do that, ask which one was an intermediate conclusion, but they could make this a harder question by saying, which one of the following most accurately describes the role played in the argument by the claim that it is very difficult for plant breeders to produce green carnations? There, if they had an answer that said it's the argument's only conclusion, many people would pick it and it would be wrong.
You would be looking for something that says intermediate conclusion, or it is a conclusion, which is also used to support the main conclusion.
Or they don't even have to say the word conclusion. I mean, they could say it's a claim for which some evidence is provided and which in turn is used to support another claim. Right. That's the role played by the thing about the green carnations. It is not the main conclusion of the argument. Yep. Wow, we beat that one to death, but I'm glad we created a new video explanation for that question. Because the one that we've got posted on the Demon is a very young looking Ben Olsen. You see that?
Yeah, look at that.
Ben's an old man these days. I can say that because so am I. But now we got a new solid one, I think.
Cool. Email daily@lsatdemon.com if you'd like to ask us a question or share some LSAT or law school admissions news. Thanks for listening.